Donald Trump's new campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, joins us now at the table. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what are you going to be doing? Are you going to do what a campaign manager does in terms of looking at the organization, what's happening in each state, or are you going to be managing the candidate?
A little bit of both. I think it's important to make sure that internally our structure is sound, that people have the equipment, the tools they need. That also includes, Charlie, our field operation, our data folks, our ground game. I'm a big believer in retail politics. I've seen it work many times, and Donald Trump is really a fantastic retail candidate.
That is when he doesn't get in front of his own message.
Well, I think we've had a tremendous messaging week, frankly. We started Monday with a very muscular speech about radical Islamic terrorism, how to fight it, what it is, why it matters. Many people in this country feel like we've been at war for 15 years against an enemy we can't name and that we hardly see. But if you look at the polls, a majority of Americans now feel less safe than they did several years ago. A majority of Americans feel that things can get better economically. So we would like to take an uplifting, optimistic, policy-centric message directly to the American people, and that's our goal.
But it's the third management change in 8 weeks. How is this not a campaign in trouble from outsiders looking in?
I see it, Gail, as a campaign that's expanding because with 12 weeks to go, less than that now, who's counting?
82 days.
That's right,
yes.
who's counting, right? With just 12 weeks to go, Gail, we look at it as an expansion at a critical and busy time for the campaign. When it comes to personnel and it comes to senior level staff, more is more. You know, the more big minds and broad shoulders we can get inside the door. Paul Manafort is still there as chairman. He retains his title. And Paul and Steve Bannon and I yesterday were together.
But now you've got three leaders, it appears. At some point, somebody has to make the call. Somebody has to be in charge. Who is that person?
I'd say it's a combination of us. And Donald Trump has made very clear who it is. So I'm comfortable with that.
It's Donald Trump.
Well, I respect him tremendously. He's the candidate. I would never have the fire in the belly, Charlie, or the bile in the throat to do what he's done, which is basically build a movement. Most politicians build campaigns. He's built a movement.
I want Margaret to get in on this, but I mean, there is Paul Manafort who famously said, if this campaign becomes a referendum on Donald Trump, it has failed. This campaign has been a referendum on Donald Trump.
I agree with you, and I made similar remarks during the Democratic convention last month because I noticed that the Democrats, when they're asked, I was at the convention in Philadelphia, and I noticed when Hillary Clinton and her supporters are asked in interviews, tell us what you're going to do about Obamacare. How would you fix the economy? How do you explain the birth and growth of ISIS since 2013? They talk about Donald Trump. So Hillary Clinton wants to talk about Donald Trump. We want to talk directly to the American people. That's the difference.
And you want to talk to women in particular.
Yes.
You were talking about having a good messaging week this week. Donald Trump said about Mrs. Clinton, she lacks the mental and physical stamina to take on ISIS and all the many adversaries we face. He said she doesn't look presidential. How do you get him to stop saying things like that?
Well, it's a choice in a contrast election. I mean, the fact is that you just showed a clip of her yesterday.
That would alienate a lot of women.
Well, you just showed a clip of her yesterday, though, Margaret, which I find to be very disappointing and unbecoming for if somebody wants to be commander-in-chief of armed forces. She's literally reading from something somebody else wrote and said, well, they can get them to read different words from a teleprompter. There's not a single job that gets created from that. There's not a single uninsured American who gets health care from that kind of nastiness. And I'll pledge this to you because I'm with you on this, Margaret. The way to speak to women and all Americans is through issues. We've got to get away from this content-free campaign and onto the substance and talk to the people who are struggling, even talk to the people who are doing well. How do they protect that? How do they feel secure moving forward?
Are you confident you can keep your candidate on message, though? Because it's that exact problem that is complicated. What you say you want to redirect it towards, which is substance.
I'm confident that he's finding joy on the job this week and that he
wasn't before.
And that he relishes being out there with the crowds, giving these speeches, partly on teleprompter, but in the case of Tuesday, Gail, at a rally, where then he's able to interact with the individuals. And what you don't see on the camera is also the local media interviews, the meetings with families and other folks. So, yes, I am confident that he could stay on message, Margaret, but also the message has to be one of substance. It has to be about issues. I'd rather lose a campaign where we put it all in the field substantively, where people saw the difference on the major issues of the day, than win a campaign based on style. If this is about style, he can go back to The Apprentice. That was really fun and successful and lucrative for him. This is not about style.
But don't style and temperament matter?
Yes, they do. Yeah. But the Hillary people, Gail, want it to be about tone and temperament. I think it also needs to be about facts and figures. And that's what you're seeing this week, facts and figures.
Speaking of facts and figures, he has received an intelligence report.
Yes.
Did he believe it?
I can't disclose that. I could tell you took it very seriously, and he very much appreciated being there.
You can't disclose whether he believed it or not?
Well, no, about the details.
No, I'm
yes,
not
of
asking
course.
details. Did he believe the intelligence report that the CIA prepared for him?
Yes, he did.
He did?
Yes. When you say believe, he certainly is taking it very seriously and digesting it. Nobody looks at something that complicated in one sitting. So this will be an ongoing
So Donald Trump is not
process.
saying, I don't believe what they may be reporting because I don't believe they know what they're doing. He's not saying
No,
that.
he hasn't said that. He did not say that yesterday in my presence before or after the briefing, and I was with him both times. Also yesterday, speaking of national security and foreign policy, we sat at a round table with generals, current congressmen, former congressmen, and other notable national security experts. It was a very, very great conversation where I also would call it very interactive, where his questions are one of somebody who wants to be commander-in-chief and wants to do well by our armed forces, by the American people, by our allies abroad. And I was happy to sit in that roundtable because I think it's very symptomatic of the types of events that we don't see as voters.
Did that briefing change any of the candidates' views on any of the national security issues?
I can't comment on that. I think what that briefing did and the roundtable that preceded it, Margaret, was it is allowing us to continue the conversation, equipping ourselves and being informed. It's incredibly important for him to remain
You think he
informed.
was
For Mrs.
uninformed
Clinton,
prior to this?
No,
On some of those
of
positions?
course not. But for he and Mrs. Clinton remain informed. The world is a dangerous place and things are happening every single day. Even though she's been Secretary of State, the fact is that this changes every day. And there are things that you and I will never know that now Secretary Clinton and Mr. Trump are learning. And I think we should applaud that in a very nonpartisan way.
You were formerly with the Ted Cruz campaign and the Ted Cruz
Super PAC, yes.
Super PAC. Ted Cruz obviously said what he had to say at the convention. What do you know about Donald Trump that Ted Cruz doesn't know?
That he's very gracious, that he promotes women. I'm told I'm the first female Republican campaign manager in presidential political history, and that tells you a lot about Donald Trump. It also tells you a great deal about him that he never said that to me. Hey, we'd like a woman.
Yes.
Are you available? I'm there based on merit, but I think it's very symptomatic of who Donald Trump has been in his own corporation, elevating and promoting women. The other thing about Donald Trump to learn is that he doesn't look at things through a political lens. I think senators and congressmen and governors tend to. They can't help themselves. This is his first campaign, and it's very refreshing that Donald Trump speaks the way many Americans speak. It's not always the perfect word because it hasn't been focus grouped, pollsters not in his ear telling him what to say and how to think and who to be. But at the same time, he's enjoying conveying his thoughts in a way and wants to take that case right to the people. He also is the guy, Charlie, that's really put political correctness on the campaign ballot this year.
It started out with 17 candidates. It's now down to 1, and he beat a lot
impressive.
of political veterans.
Yes,
And you
indeed.
can't
We've got to
beat
leave
that.
it there.
Thank you.
Kellyanne,
Thank you
thank you
for
Thanks
very
for having
much.
me.